Hey folks, how you doing out there today? Hope everything is going well for you. Figured today I'd take you out for another look on some of the behind the scenes build on the new Highway Haulin map 2. Give you a little better look at how things are put together and maybe a few tips if you're a map builder, aspiring map builder, whatever it may be. Hopefully you find this process interesting. All right, so what we're going to be digging into today is we're going to start building a road over for anyone that's watching. We're going to have some rocket stuff I mentioned in a previous video to this that's going to be delivered around the map. So we're going to be building in around that. What we're going to be working on is putting in a log pickup area. I figured I would make the long logs be a loading area on this map and have the shorter logs on map 1, which is South River, available now for anyone that wants to try it out. What I figured here is I will probably make a bigger trees, kind of simulate the larger logs being available over here, and I might in general downsize the trees on map 1 to kind of accommodate. So what we're doing, we come across this bridge. This is where up to this bridge is going to be fairly easy traveling, but now you're crossing the river. This is going to be the only built bridge. There's probably going to be one over there somewhere, but we're going to deal with this part. So first thing we want to do, we're building this as an old road out to the old factory out there. So we don't want it to be too easy, but we want it to end up looking weathered, be a fairly tough road that may have been easier at one point. So we're going to work on this main road. We'll work it up around the top of the hill, and then we're going to put a little trail, work on making some logging roads over in this corner. Now, easiest way to deal with moving a road down a hill, I find, and the best way to move ground in general is by using the flatten setting. It's just going to move the most amount of stuff in the least amount of clicks, but it isn't always what you want. So when I start a hill that I want to make a road that's going to be kind of reasonable, I will start at the top and I'm going to work my way down, and we're just going to kind of rough it in. We're going to go up and down and kind of get our general slope that we want out of the road. We want to make this drivable, but not super easy. It's going to be a big trailer that's coming out this road. So got to kind of keep in mind what kind of challenge you want the player to have. I don't want to make it impossible, but I do want a player to actually have to drive the vehicle a little bit. We don't want to make it an easy corner. And again, I'm light clicking. I'm not holding the button. So I'm just roughing it in. It's not going to be flat-ish is really all we can shoot for here. And we more than anything just want to get the right slope. These lines you see are the water barriers, how wide I've made the river and the lake and stuff. Right now it may be simpler to just move this water out of the way. It is a little annoying when you're working under that overlay. And these lines come up regardless. I'm pretty sure I haven't found a way to turn them off. Whenever you're doing the ground manipulation, essentially. So what we could do for now, because it doesn't really matter, is we'll just suck that in a little bit, move it out of the way. And now we don't have to actually deal with that in our way. You'll see as soon as I click on the geometry, shows back up. So we're just going to rough this in a little bit. And we want to keep in mind that this is going to be a bit of an off-road trail. It's not going to be flat, like I said. But at one point in time, it took some fairly big trailer loads in and out of this secret military installation. Now, something I'm keeping in mind for later on is this will probably be a spot for a cabin or something like that. There may be a delivery. I want to work in a little more of the small house, like single deliveries, almost excuses to use scouts once in a while. But we'll get there when we get there. I don't plan out too much. It's more kind of experiment and play around and come up with ideas. So this is pretty good. I would expect this to not have a guardrail, or maybe a broken one at best. For coming up around, you got to imagine when we're coming down here with wink wink nudge nudge the rocket trailer, you come into this corner, and keep in mind everything in the editor looks smaller. When you're down there on this road, that's going to be quite an edge to not want to go off while you're coming down the hill. So for now, we'll call that good. What we want to do is let's pick basically where we want. I'm thinking of putting a couple loading areas and spreading out the long logs to a few spots. So the couple times you're going to come in here to get stuff, you may run out on one and have to drive over to a different one. And really, we can kind of skirt it around in here. This is going to end up being swampy, I think. Haven't decided. Let me know if you have any ideas. So when I'm marking things, when I'm laying them out, basically what I'm going to do is just drop a couple of logs down in a spot, and we'll call that an area. And then eventually, once we bring in, we'll put some trees and stuff in here. Oh, got to click on that. And we can kind of work the whole area into a log pickup spot as we go. May not end up right here, maybe over here, who knows, but let's call that the spot for now. So these logging roads are going to branch off this slightly larger road, and we got to pick a spot. So do we want to shoot down through here and maybe, like, just keeping it natural? I'm thinking maybe another log pickup area could be over, perhaps, because this flat area is more or less going to be the real swampy part. And something to keep in mind when you're building, you can't just make a road curve through a flat field. Like, you got to give reasons for the road to turn. So having a bit of a cliff here, if that's what it ends up being, is going to give a reason for this road to skirt around and up and avoid the swamp. We can work this in to make it a little more natural, but keep in mind to give the player a reason to meander around on a road. Don't just make a S-shaped road for no reason. Try to have an obstacle, because, I mean, typically when roads are built, they're as straight as they can be. The least amount of hassle or expense, I guess, would probably be the big thing nowadays. So what we're going to do, let's pick a road right here. It's kind of up over the flats a bit. So what we want to do is select the square. Our road the new road we're putting in cannot intersect with any square that intersects in this road here. So if we put the road here, our other road can go up to this square. So let's add, and we're going to do the little grass path, because these are going to be roads that haven't, that's the wrong one. That one's going to be orange colored in the middle more. But you can see when they are in the same square, I can't even see this road, because one of them will get canceled out. So there's the road. You can see this square is touching the road, so it doesn't show. As soon as we get one block away, it's good. So that was the complete wrong road. I want Grass Road Russia, which gives you green grass in the middle. Back to overlay. Right there. So these nodes are numbered, and node is each point in the road. I usually, the one on the left always spawns on the left as a 0. I usually just try to keep Going 1, 2, 3, 4 the way I'm going, it doesn't really matter at all, other than to add a next one, I just get used to hitting after. So this is going to be a tougher road. Let's look at kind of our lay of the land. We can make this anything we want after, but let's kind of follow what I just rough shape the map, and I kind of go around and change it as I go. We'll just put some turns, because we're going to be hauling long logs, like I said. So we want to be mindful of keeping the road challenging but doable with the long log equipment. Typically a long dolly trailer or a saddle. And what I would kind of expect if we're going to make this a loading area is what we're going to do is probably move this to a new spot, and we'll make this swamp kind of wrap around more. So maybe somewhere up in here for now. It doesn't have to be good. It's just marking our spot. So what we could do is, just to help visualize, let's put in our swampy water area. We'll just stretch it out. So another important thing when you're building is water cannot overlap each other either, or it goes all funky and just kind of makes the whole... I think the problem is they try to connect together, because you can connect rivers as long as you don't overlap the water. Doesn't matter if we go outside the map. I have this endless water setting in, so you won't notice anyways. And we want the swamp to wrap around, so we need to make sure this covers all our area right up to where we're going to stop. So we have water overlapping right there, so we're going to have to do something about it. Let's see if it goes nuts. It doesn't, but I don't trust it. So what I would do is I'm going to add another node. Kind of wanted to go at the other side, but we'll just loop it around a bit more. If you turn water too far, it kind of folds. I don't think it really shows in game, but just make a habit of making your river, oh, they're all called rivers, but your water just as wide as it needs to be. Like this river is a little extra because I'm going to make some swampy area along it, but rather than just putting a big straight one across, because then I would have more trouble lining up these water areas. Or if this overlaps that other one, we're going to have an issue. So now we just want to bring that around a little bit more. We're not overlapping this pool, so we should be fine. Now back to the quickest, easiest way to move ground. We're going to use our flatten. The fall off, I've said before, is the circle in the middle. So if I put it all the way up, it's a tiny little circle. Big circle in the middle. What it indicates is it's going to feather as it gets further away from the center circle. So you'll get smaller flatten area, or if you go like this, you'll get hard edges. If you have it turned down, and if you have it turned up, it'll be much smoother hill, and both are useful in different situations. So we just want to, we're going to rough it in here. We'll work on a swamp maybe in another video, but now we'll be able to see the water. Which again always helps with visual. We'll put trees in next, and you'll just see how much it actually changes And it just helps you complete the vision of what you're trying to build. Not to say I have what I'm doing here planned out. I'm just kind of winging it like usual. But next thing, as I said, we'll put some trees in. See, I've said in other videos, you don't want to do too much foliage because then you get frame drop areas. And you may notice here I have all the outside of the map banked up. The reason I do that is I leave the very bottom and I come straight up and make an area. And what it'll do is it'll spawn the edge of the map indicators, those red do not cross sign or whatever it is on the outside of the map. It'll spawn it inside this hill so you never actually see it, which really just helps keep the immersion. And really it also acts as kind of a blocker so that people don't come up to the edge of the map, really. It's one of those things. It doesn't really matter other than when you see that line, you lose a bit of immersion. In the first Highway Hauling Manchester map, I made the overpass too close. And it still bugs me when I see it in videos and stuff now is when you go across the intersection, you can see it for not long, but you can see it. And it was just bad planning. And I was already too far before I realized it. If you've ever tiled a floor or backsplash or something, that's another thing. I did the floor in my bathroom and I still look at the one crooked tile that I kind of said, it doesn't matter. So same with that map, and I can't really change it because it would be so much work to move everything around and redo it all. It's just, it kind of is what it is. So I'm just going to put this one kind of tree in right now. Usually I'd put bushes and stuff, and what we're going to do is scale it. You always want variety in your builds. You don't want all the trees to be the same size unless perhaps it's a tree farm. Something like that. But nature is, in general, pretty random. So always keep that in mind when you're building. Things don't have to be 90 degrees, perfectly square. So now we see an area. First problem here, we've got our water a little too deep. So what I typically do is find one of those silly blue nodes that are hard to see in the river. And we can't really have much of a difference in height of our river. So actually what I should do, Control Z, we'll bring that back. Let's set the whole river height with this end. So we're going to click that node. We're going to bring it down until these logs aren't underwater. Unfortunately, you gotta reload it and see the old model. It's the same with roads. Will stay on the ground until you click back in. So we're going to set that as our height. It's got our area out of the water. It's still got some depth. So we're just going to select it, and we're going to select and copy the number from the y-axis. So y is up and down, z. Basically y positive, y negative, z positive, z negative, and x positive, x negative are the axis that you deal with. So we want to move the y down, which is height. So we're going to just paste that height into both of the nodes. Easiest way to make sure everything's straight and the same. And that'll all disappear because the water's quite a bit down. So really all we have to do is come back in here, throw in our flatten, because we know we like the height of the water here, and we're just going to run through real quick. Don't overthink it. When you're making a swamp, you want to have not all water, right? So we're going to want some hills and little mounds sticking out. So just a real quick run around. We can work on making that pretty later on. Essentially just let it rebuild. You'd be surprised how much time modders will sit and wait for their computers to process stuff. When you're like basically re-rendering the map and packing it into its files, it's one of those things where you tell it to go ahead and you come back in 10 or 15 minutes at least. So I was going to play around with the road, but let's work the road all the way in. We'll fill in some trees and we'll call that the video for today. That's a bit of a steep hill to be doing a log with. So again, we want to use, or I use, the flatten tool a lot. Now this is a situation where I'm going to have a little sharper edges because you can make some nice roads, and you kind of go in with the smooth tool later on and take the real hard edges out of it. You can see the ground as you're building with it kind of steps, and that's not a bad thing because we can smooth and use those bumps with the smooth tool, which we'll do probably in another video. Maybe we'll do it on this one. It's a pretty small road. Now what I'm doing is kind of making a bit of a cliff that we're going to work along, right? As if they kind of picked the path of least resistance. And what we'll do, again, we're roughing it in. You don't want to overthink it too much, and you'll probably play around a bit more. I know I will. A lot of times I'll go in with the height tool. Split like minus 30, minus 50 is probably not bad. A little better, or a little smaller brush. And you can really, any of these ditches you can kind of work in. We want to make it look like water washed it down, right? So that's something I'll do to kind of finish an area off, but we're in rough it in mode. We're trying to make a passable road that's fairly tough and also scenic. So you're probably not going to have a very flat road, and I do want to make this a fairly tight trail, which is going to add to the challenge of getting those long logs back out. And a quick way, again, just grab a spot that's higher, bring it over, feather it in, and then all you have to do is pick the spot of the height you wanted before. You just kind of rough it back in. So as I said before, that watermark's in our way. Probably would have been smart to do this road work before I put that water in. But nobody's perfect, right? I'm used to working through it. You just may find it annoying if you're new to the map building, or some people probably just find it annoying in general. Now these hills right here are gonna look a lot bigger in game. That is for certain. And what we'll do is we'll throw in a few trees, a few bushes, just kind of rough it in here, and maybe we'll pop into the game real quick and I can show you at the end what we did and what it looks like. Now to make this just a little bit swampier looking, we're just going to go with a light raise of the ground. In fact, using a bit of a larger brush is good because you can just get these little bits popping up out of the water. So you want it to be a fair bit of water, but a swamp typically has quite a bit of bog in it too. And then smaller brush for the smaller areas, fine tune it a bit. So So you're really playing, you use all the tools all the time, essentially. Like right here, it's a little bit deeper, but you know what? It's not bad to have maybe a deeper spot back there. So maybe we go to lower the ground a little bit and give it one of those. Let's click it in and we'll see what we got. Okay, now we are going to, let's fill in some trees. We'll bring the road in a little bit. It'll make it just kind of look a little more realistic, and helps kind of build the shape of the road and what you want to look like when it's finished. I'm going to leave these steep parts without trees. Maybe we'll put a little bit of a cliff overlay or something. And again, just roughing in. We're not looking at the finished product yet. In fact, some of this stuff may have more trees, no trees, who knows. But it definitely gives us a better look at what overall it's going to finish up as. This is a little bit thinner than I would typically put trees, but again, we're just starting. We're going to stay off, maybe make that a cliff like I said. And just fill in. We're going to stay away from right on the water. We could use more swampier trees for down there. There's probably nothing too big on that wet of an area. If it is, like maybe some dead trees or something. Again, we're just going to fill in down to here real quick. And throw a little bit of scale around there. Do not have to be precise with scaling. Again, the more random, the better. We're just going to quickly color it on. Trees are all different sizes. If you really want to go the extra mile, you can turn the scale down. And on the same note, go over it in the smallest, which really will give you more variety. They do have a random setting or randomize, which kind of, sorry, let me a bigger one. Don't like it as much as doing it the other way by hand. Just better finished product, I find, or my preference. So let's load it in. Now you can see we have a bit of a feel. What we're going to do in the end, probably not today. I don't have any of the distribution set up. That takes a while. But this needs to have some trees down because obviously if we're logging, we're cutting trees. So that's something to keep in mind. Yes, it's giving us some look, but we're probably going to end up changing it after and kind of fudging it in a bit more so it looks a little more realistic. So now, and this is a big selling point. You'll notice how simple things look without the bushes. Sometimes you have a field and there aren't bushes, but in around the forest, and you don't want to put this too thick. I've said it before, but I'll mention again that if you go too heavy on some of the plants, it's typically what I find gives you those areas in bushes and stuff where you get frame drops. So it's about hitting the balance of making it look nice but not overdoing it. You'll never see the backside of this, so we're not going to bother putting anything on it. Any of those trees there are accidental, not a big deal. These bushes won't spawn in water, and you're going to see these little things in the swampy area, so just go nuts. If you get a bit in the water, it won't matter when you rebuild, unless you go over here and put ignore water. They will not spawn on the water. And I don't even mind the little bushes on steeper areas. Not uncommon, adds a little more pizzazz to it. Get down here. I don't have You can also make this stuff spawn on roads. Bushes you're probably not going to use that for, but rocks are definitely something that you allow to spawn on the road. Maybe we'll do a bit of that. We'll kind of fill in this one road and then we'll have a quick look in editor afterwards. So again, real quick, I'm just going to go bigger because there are going to be a bit of variety in the size. You can do small bushes. I don't mind being a little bit taller. Some of the trees even spawn as bushes just as their randomizer. So anyways, we're looking okay there. Next thing you want to do whenever you're making a road is make sure you didn't, oops, we got to go to density. Make sure you didn't paint stuff over the road. Where you meet up and you have to put down a PBR material to hook the road up, stuff will spawn on the dirt, or a lot of stuff will. So you just want to make sure you have no plants or distributions is the word across your road. So with these roads, a lot of times what I'll do is do a full size dirt. Just put that in as the connector. And we'll go back to the grass just to kind of make it look similar. Just fill it in. Usually I don't go all the way to the end. Here you're going to have tires turning. Even that's probably almost too far, but again, sell the look. Don't be afraid to do the little things. There are a lot of people that will notice. So what we're going to do real quick here, if we were going to finish up a road, we're going to keep it around that -13 mark. I'm going to go to a real small brush. Just kind of feather in the road a bit. And keep in mind you want the sides of the road to be worse. You want people to think the road is the best choice of travel, even though it's rough too. I've done that a few times. In fact, there's a few spots in the Outback overlanding map in between trails that are much flatter than I meant to leave them. I've seen people drive through them in videos. And it's just one of those things to keep in mind. And that's the other good part about using the flattening tool to move a lot of area. As long as you go back and you just kind of smooth over some of the sharp transitions, it gives you a really good variation with the ground heights. And again, just smooth it out after so it's not real sharp, abrupt. You want it to look natural. Erosion's typically rounded over is what you think of. We're just we don't want to make deep ruts, but water, remember, we're water would have flowed down the trail and kind of cut out these ruts. So we're kind of going up and down more than anything. You'd have a bit of a ditch. And this is just a real quick. Okay, so now, I guess in case nobody, or there's someone who hasn't done it yet, we're going to add a distribution. We're going to put some rocks and sticks in. So we want to go to add distribution. Now we're going to select the different brushes that we want to put inside this general brush. So the first thing we want is small rocks. And we could also put in like the small rocks forest. And we'll leave it at that for now. A bit of variety is always nice. The rocks aren't all the same. We'll do some small twigs. And that's probably a good start. What I do is there's debris chunks, which kind of look like little mud chunks. I usually put those in a different brush. splitting some of that stuff up is helpful because it'll spawn differently if it's in different brushes. So now we just have to name it. So DSTR underscore whatever you want dot TGA. Really doesn't matter what you name it because it's not something you're going to look at again other than giving it a name. So density. Now, the thing with rocks, the way I do it, first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to scale everything down to 0 in the area we're working with. So we're going to make rocks as small as possible. This is how I avoid overdoing it with rocks. Now we're going to go to density and we're going to go to like 57, 56. We're going to do a big brush. We're just going to lightly single click. We don't want to overdo it, like I said. Just a real light. Now, the darker, the more you go, or the higher you turn the number up, that'll be a lot of rocks. We're just going to, I'll do it again real quick. Just one click move, one click move. Don't even drag it with the button click, just one click move. And it'll kind of disperse. You can see some are a little heavier, some are lighter. One thing we want to do is ignore overlays because we want this stuff to spawn on the road. So now, if we look in game, you're going to see how little these rocks are. Now what we need to do is click on the right spot. We're going to go to scale. We're going to go down to like 0.7. We're going to do 55. We're just going to quickly go through and color some scale. So they're going to be that size. Now we're going to go up to like 65. We're going to do the same thing. Maybe not quite as heavy as the smaller ones. And then the same thing, go up to like 75. And this one we're just going to do a quick little run around for some of the bigger rocks. Then we're going to put our scale all the way back down. We're going to essentially erase some of the scaling in the opposite direction. This is where the variety comes from. So just let it load in, and now we got a bunch of sticks and rocks all over. So now we're just going to run down over to the lumber or log loading area, and let's just do a little bit down there, and then we'll bring it up in game and have a look at what we're playing with and what this little bit of time put in has given us. So first thing we want to do is flatten out a bit of an area. We need a bit of a turnaround spot that will store logs. And again, we're just going to rough this in quick. I'm going to go at it a little more extensively behind the scenes and make it all realistic. Now you want this area to be flat, but not unrealistically flat is something to keep in mind. And we will use a bit of mud in here. I'm not going to put it in for the video. I'll do a video adding mud in with a little bit more detail in the future, just so you can see how I do it. I'm sure there's many ways. I have a bit of a method to just try and keep it more of a natural feel, and I like to mix up the depth quite a bit, just to give you that chance to kind of have one tire stuck and one tire on mud that you can grab into a bit. So anyways, we'll do one of those coming up, maybe when I do one of the bigger swamps over there. So in terms of just throwing a couple logs in, we just Control D to copy. Again, like I've shown on with the blocks and stuff in other videos, you want to turn stuff around so it's not all the same. We only have so many models, but you can be pretty creative with it that way. So now, essentially, what you'd want to do is make a little bit of a turnaround zone. In fact, first let's move this road back a bit. And we can do some of it with the road. Now, if you turn roads too sharp, they won't spawn in properly. So sometimes you want to put an extra couple nodes just to help you around the corner. See if this one actually worked. It did, but you'll miss a chunk of the road if you go too sharp. And what we're going to do is just bring this road around by the log pile. And spin it back around for now. See how close we can get. And we'll just fill it in with our ground. When you're painting any of the materials, you typically, I don't usually go under about 50. It's nice to have a bit of an edge, even if you're doing a sharp edge on asphalt. You still want a bit of a edge to feather in, or it'll be really hard angled lines, because this engine can only render stuff so fine, so you do want a bit, you don't want to paint like below like 30 fall off, or you just won't get good results. So we'll put our little bit of grass down the middle. The reason I turn this all the way up is it gives it a bit of a smaller brush that way. Because you almost, there's times, even when you're putting ruts and stuff in the road, this smallest brush is too big. You can see if you want to do fine tuning. Anyways, next thing we'll do, and probably the last thing, and then we'll rebuild, is let's just put a little bit of ambience into our swamp. So we'll add a distribution again. They're called canes, are the cattails that you can see, and we want the Russian ones because they're green. And then personally, I usually put a grass or two in there. So we want one of the bigger grasses. There's a lot of grass. Another thing you can easily overdo it on is grasses, and they hit the system pretty hard. So if you're building a map, don't overdo it on the grasses, or you will suffer. So we just put our name in, DSTR _ whatever you want, .tga. When it comes up like this, it means you gave a proper file name. If it comes up with an error, you probably just typed it wrong. So this one, we want our canes to spawn in the water, and there will be mud, so we want them to be in the mud. So we're going to turn those two settings on. We're going to put our fall off pretty low when you're painting distributions like this. And I usually paint things with around a 1 to 2 brush. Turn that up a bit more. Canes are something you got to be careful. You don't want to overdo it. They're not terribly taxing on the system, I don't think. They actually disappear at a certain render distance. There are ones that you can stay longer. I don't use them very much because it's a fine balance between running well and looking good. And I don't mind that these pop out of sight when you're not very close to them. So I'm just going to kind of rough it around. You could have areas like in here that maybe this little spot's a little thicker. They do grow up on ground a little bit too, right? So, and the usual, let's just throw in a bit of size change because it's always going to add to the realism. Let those spawn in. And the one other thing that I know I've seen people complain about it, and it is challenging to lay in the wetness, which gives you the wet look of the mud and such. And it also makes the mud muddier, I guess I would say. And what I do is I never go really above like 56, 58. I get a bit of a wider brush. And again, I'm not holding and painting. I'm just clicking. And you just kind of, I don't know, you get used to kind of feathering the edge in so it's not super wet looking, like unrealistically wet. In the water area, there's going to be, it's going to look that wet, but I think the biggest problem map makers have is feathering in that edge a bit. And I just kind of give it one of those, and you'll go in and test, and you'll know pretty quick if you didn't do enough. Now I'm going to turn it up a bit to do the middle because it is going to be all wet. But it's more the edge, and honestly, a bigger brush is easier with that large feathering edge, so you want to keep your fall off at 75 or above and click. Don't hold the button and drag, because if you just click and move around, you'll get a lot lighter distribution of it. And I guess we should also at least turn the water brown so it looks muddy, so that we go to water mud, and we're just going to crank it up. Give yourself a good brush and just paint it in. The only time you don't want to use, like if you want water muddy, turn it all the way up. If you want to kind of feather it in, it's challenging, but you just got to lightly bring it in. And you just got to get used to how this stuff applies. You'll see it more in game, but there's the full muddiness. So anyways, I'm going to repack this, rebuild this, and I'll see you when we hop into the game and have a look what we made. All right. We are just sitting at that bridge that we kind of started off when we were smoothing out the road. Figured we'd take the new 80 Beast single cab version out. First time I've been out in the truck from Phantom, and another fun little buggy. And we'll go all the way down to the log loading area. That'll eventually turn into a little bit more, but get a good look at the quick kind of rough-in we did with this road. This right now is probably a little rougher than I would want it to be. Kind of want to have that shape and the tough driving. I mean, we're scooting along pretty quick here right now. Might make the rocks a touch smaller coming up the hill, kind of more like this area right here. This road's closer. I mean, I think we got the right pitch in terms of steepness and stuff. Probably just go through with the smoothing brush and clean it up a little bit. I imagine this road's going to be the same way. It again, we want it to be a small logging trail. It's kind of off the main path coming in. It's actually looking like a pretty good little 4x4 scout kind of trail right now. Need some more rocks and sticks in around on it. Maybe get a bit more of the larger scaling done on this part of the road. A good start. I think we needed a little more trees in closer to the road, but again, At this point, coming in this part of the road, I would start adding in some of the stumps and the cut down trees and some of the dead trees lying around. So this was just a real quick throw a couple things in, make it look half decent, and you can see what the work we put in there, what you get in game. It was really cool to see some of the comments about people not realizing how much time it takes to do this stuff. And hey, modding is a labor of love. You can ask any modder. Anything we get for it, we're quite grateful for. But we do it just because we love either giving you players vehicles or adventures or new stuff in games. It's all the same thing, different pile. And it's all done from that same place. We're just the folks that like to create challenges or give you things to play with. Like I said, so grateful for anything any of you all feel you want to give us. Well, let me know what you think. I'll have a new video coming out soon with some new progress. You all take it easy and enjoy.